The sound of the laptop shattering on the marble floor was so loud it froze the entire boardroom in place. 1 second, the room was filled with a low hum of executives discussing quarterly numbers. The next, the most expensive device in the building lay broken in 1,000 glittering pieces at the feet of a trembling janitor. Everyone turned. The CEO's face went pale, and the single father holding the broken cleaning cart looked like his entire world had just ended. Before the story continues, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and stories that remind us of our humanity, please take a moment to like this video, comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to the channel. Your support truly helps these stories reach hearts that need them. Michael Carter had not planned for that moment. He had planned only to clean the glass windows before the executives returned from lunch. He had planned to finish his shift early so he could make it across town before the daycare closed. He had planned to bring home pizza because Tuesdays were pizza night for him and his 6-year-old daughter, Lily. He had not planned to destroy the most important laptop in the building. The boardroom itself felt like a cathedral of power. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city skyline. The long, polished table reflected the lights like water. Around it sat men and women whose suits cost more than Michael's monthly rent. At the head of the table stood Richard Holloway, CEO of Holloway Dynamics, one of the largest technology firms on the West Coast. His laptop, the one now lying in pieces, held the company's future projections, merger contracts, and confidential data for a billion-dollar acquisition scheduled to be announced the following week. Michael had not known any of that when the wheel of his cleaning cart caught on the thick carpet edge. He only knew the cart lurched forward, the bucket tipped, water spilled, his reflexes shot out, grabbing for the nearest object, the sleek black laptop perched on the corner of the table. It was already falling. The crack echoed. Silence followed. Michael's hands shook. His heart hammered so violently he felt dizzy. For a moment he forgot how to breathe. The executives stared at him as if he were a ghost that had wandered into their world. Richard Holloway slowly stood. Michael tried to speak, but his mouth produced nothing. He saw the look in Richard's eyes, not just anger but calculation, that cold look people get when deciding how much damage something is worth. Michael whispered an apology so quietly he barely heard it himself. He thought of Lily waiting at daycare. He thought of the overdue electric bill on the fridge. He thought of the envelope marked final notice, hidden in his jacket pocket. This job was everything. 2 years earlier, his life had been very different. He had been a mechanical engineer at a mid-size manufacturing company. He had designed robotic systems. He had worn suits. He had meetings. Then his wife, Sarah, died suddenly from a heart condition no one knew she had. Grief swallowed him. He missed deadlines. He forgot things. His performance slipped. Then the layoffs came. He was 34, unemployed, grieving and raising a toddler alone. He sold his car. He took night shifts. He stocked shelves. He cleaned offices. Anything to keep Lily fed and sheltered. Holloway Dynamics hired him 6 months earlier as a janitor on the night crew. It wasn't the future he imagined, but it kept the lights on. Until now. Richard Holloway's voice finally broke the silence, sharp and controlled, demanding to know what Michael thought he was doing. Michael tried to explain, his words tumbling over each other, his voice shaking with exhaustion and fear. He offered to pay for the damage, though he knew he couldn't afford even a fraction of the cost. The executives murmured. Some shook their heads. Some smirked. One woman near the end of the table quietly closed her notebook, already assuming the meeting was over for him. Michael waited for the words that would end everything. You're fired. But Richard did something unexpected. He told everyone to stay seated. He knelt. The CEO of a billion-dollar company bent down on the marble floor beside the shattered laptop. His fingers carefully lifted the casing. Something slipped from inside the broken shell, a folded piece of paper yellowed with age. Richard froze. The room leaned forward. Michael watched confusion spread across the CEO's face as he unfolded the paper. It wasn't a document. It wasn't a contract. It was a hand-drawn diagram, precise, detailed, unmistakably technical. Richard's breathing changed. He stared at the drawing, then up at Michael. He asked where Michael got it. Michael blinked, confused. He hadn't even known there was paper inside the laptop. He told him he had never seen it before. Richard turned the page over. On the back was a formula, a design equation, one Richard recognized immediately. It was a prototype blueprint for a high-efficiency thermal stabilization system, a design Holloway Dynamics had been struggling to finalize for nearly 2 years. Michael felt the room closing in on him. He had no idea what was happening. He only knew the tension had thickened. Richard asked him again if he recognized the work. Michael hesitated. Something in that drawing stirred a distant memory. He knelt beside the CEO and studied the lines. His mind began assembling pieces automatically, like muscle memory waking from sleep. He whispered that the compression ratio was wrong. Several executives gasped. Michael, embarrassed, tried to explain that the alignment between the heat exchanger and the venting chamber LD fail under high load. He pointed at the drawing. He traced the stress fracture line with his finger. He described the failure scenario. He did it without realizing he was speaking the language of an engineer again. The boardroom had gone completely silent. Richard stared at him as if seeing him for the first time. Michael looked up, suddenly aware of where he was, of what he was doing, of the mop handle still clutched in his other hand. He stopped speaking. He apologized again. But Richard didn't look angry anymore. He looked stunned. He asked Michael where he learned engineering. Michael told him the truth. He told him about his old job. He told him about Sarah, about Lily, about the nights cleaning offices, about how the only thing that kept him going was knowing his daughter still smiled when he came home. Richard slowly stood. He asked the board if they would excuse him for a moment. Then he asked Michael to follow him. Michael thought he was being escorted out. Instead, they walked into Richard's private office overlooking the city. Richard closed the door and placed the broken laptop on the desk. He explained that the drawing inside had been a last-ditch prototype created by the company's top research team. They had reached a dead end. The design would not stabilize. The entire acquisition depended on solving it. He asked Michael to look at it again. Michael hesitated. He didn't feel like he belonged there. But something in Richard's eyes, not authority, but hope, pulled him forward. Michael studied the diagram, his mind racing. Years of training and instinct came rushing back. He explained where the energy flow collapsed, where microfractures would form, how the entire structure could be rebalanced with a new lattice distribution. He grabbed a pen. He began sketching. 2 hours later, the board reassembled. Michael stood at the head of the table wearing his janitor's uniform, presenting a solution that none of the company's elite engineers had seen. The room was electric. When he finished, no one spoke. Richard finally asked if he could build it. Michael said yes. That day changed everything. Within 3 weeks, the prototype worked. The acquisition went through. Holloway Dynamics. Stock surged. And Michael Carter was no longer on the night shift. He was offered a full-time engineering position with benefits, flexible hours, and a salary that made his knees weak. But the greatest moment came when he picked Lily up from daycare that evening, early for the first time in months, and told her he wouldn't be cleaning offices at night anymore. She hugged him so hard he cried in the parking lot. Life did not become perfect overnight. There were still bills, still grief, still exhaustion. But the weight had lifted. The tunnel had an end now. Months later, Michael was standing in that same boardroom, wearing a tailored suit, presenting new projects for the future of the company. The executives who once stared at him in silence now listened carefully to every word. And every time he passed the cleaning crew in the hallway, he stopped, smiled, and asked their names. because he never forgot where he had been standing when the world finally changed. Before this story ends, if this journey touched your heart, if it reminded you that no one is invisible and that every person carries a story, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel. Your engagement helps these stories continue. Special request: please comment the word hope below if you believe that second chances still exist. Michael never smashed another laptop, but the one he did changed everything. And somewhere in the city that night, a little girl fell asleep, knowing her father would be home before bedtime again.